directing air traffic in our nation's skies, building the cars we drive, processing our tax returns, and handling tasks vital to our health. These and other critical jobs will likely be performed by the students now attending public schools in California, where 1 of every 8 American children is educated. And that ought to scare every one of us.
We've basically turned our back on schools.
Once a leader in public education, California is now near the bottom.
There's something missing in the system.
Those schools are slums. There's no better word for it.
We're always on a survival level.
Coming up, journalist John Merrow examines how the nation's largest school system fell from first to worst and why that matters to the entire country. This program is made possible by a grant from the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation, with additional support from the Annenberg Foundation.
Good morning. Don't forget to vote. It's election day. Good morning. Just a reminder not to forget to vote. Good morning. Don't forget to vote today.
I am.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Don't forget to vote. It's election day. Thanks.
This man is campaigning hard.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Don't forget to vote today. It's election day.
His name is John Dacey. He's the school superintendent in the Southern California district of Santa Monica, Malibu.
Good morning. Don't forget to vote today.
Dacey is not running for office. Instead, he's out here at 7 a.m. for a different cause. On the ballot this election day in June 2003 is a measure asking local voters to approve a tax hike. If the measure passes, millions of dollars will go to the public schools in Santa Monica, Malibu. If it fails, cuts in education will likely follow.
This election is critical. What's at stake? 207 employees' jobs, 91 faculty, programs, services, actually opportunities for kids to succeed. That's what's at stake.
Good morning. Don't forget to vote today.
Dacey's district serves one of the wealthiest communities in the country. Nonetheless, Santa Monica's public schools are chronically underfunded.
In California right now, the average cost to support a prisoner for 1 year is $27,000. We have a little under $6,000 to support a student for a year. That's a serious problem.
Leave that on the counter, and I'll see if I can take care of that.
It's also an old problem in California, one that John Dacey walked into when he moved here from Rhode Island 3 years ago with his wife and school-aged children.
All right, bye, sweetie. Have a good day.
I was surprised as a parent and shocked as a leader of the system. I walked into classrooms and I realized it was unbelievable what they do not have. PE, arts, music, counselors, psychologists, social workers, speech therapists, guidance counselors, career counselors, electives are all minimum or non-existent.
It's a problem almost everywhere in the so-called Golden State.
The country's second largest school system and thousands of teachers are heading for a collision.
They're talking about losing teachers. They're talking about losing staff.
How can a state so rich do so poorly?
Compton residents are well aware of the deplorable conditions at their schools. They were not willing.
It's a state that systematically underfunds its public schools, the physicality of our public schools. Their conditions are incredibly compromised. They have enormous challenges, enormous challenges.
Though Santa Monica's schools face challenges, compared to the rest of the state, they're well off. That could change, depending on the vote.
No, this is going to be gated.
This is not the first time John Dacey has asked local residents to pay more. He tried once before and narrowly lost. In California, raising taxes to support public schools is no simple matter. Standing in Dacey's way is a 1978 law requiring any tax hike to be approved by 2/3 of voters. This time around, Dacey has mobilized the community.
Do a poll check when you get out there, and then the rest of the time you're on your own.
We've had over 200 volunteers each day for the last 5 days.
Well, we wanted to remind you of your polling place. Once again, that's Hemisphere, 1627 Montana Avenue.
And there have been over 1,000 volunteers phone banking and walking precincts for the last 5 weeks. The community is well aware of what's needed to happen, and so it's their decision.
On Election Day, the polls opened at 8 a.m. Mind telling me how you voted?
Yes, on Measure S, of course.
Why, of course, it's not a slam dunk.
Well, because I have 3 boys in the public schools, and I need this to pass. We need this to pass.
I voted for Measure S.
Why?
Because I have 2 kids, and I really want to maintain good quality schools, and I want people to go to public schools, not private schools.
I'm going to vote against the proposal S. That's the only thing that I have heard about, and I don't believe in the taxing the people more.
I'm concerned that there was going to be cuts in the schools. I mean, that's certainly a concern. I think education is very important, but I don't know why I, as a single person who doesn't have kids, have to bear so much of it.
Throughout the day, as votes were cast, the campaigning continued. How are you feeling?
Anxious, you know, there's so much at stake and so little control over it.
Dacey would have to wait hours for the results. He saw the election as the only way to prevent Santa Monica schools from slipping, as so many others in California already had.
Do you think if Californians could just go see what is normal in Michigan or Iowa, Connecticut, they would revolt?
They'd move. They would go to those places because what you want for any child, you'd want for your own child. And to see that would be an incredible awakening experience. Those who stayed would demand it.
No one knew how the election would turn out for John Dacey, but what was clear is where the trouble in California had all begun and how far its public schools have fallen. In the post-World War glow of the 1950s, California was a very different state.
There was a sense that California was the cutting edge of the American dream, and that what was going to be put together here was going to justify all the struggle of the Second World War. It was the brave new world of suburbia, of families, of swimming pools.
I love you, California. You're the state that welcomes all.
And there's a mood there that California had to educate the workforce for this wonderful future that awaited it.
In the 1950s, California schools were thought to be among the best in the nation. Back then, local communities controlled their schools and paid for them with local property taxes. New suburbs were springing up everywhere, and in some districts, the money poured in.
Public schools were being built by the hour and dedicated. And public school architecture was at its best. An entire generation of talented young men and women went into public school teaching and administration. There was a sense that a utopia was being formed in the classroom.
The extra charge estimated by the subcontractor is...
One of the main things I remember was we had free summer school. We had 6 weeks paid for by the school district where they had kids go every day to a program 9 to 12 in the morning that was like a fairly good summer camp that you'd pay money for.
My dad came out here after the war. He was attracted by many things in California, a business climate, a sense of hope climate, but among those things was good schools.
The education of its young has always been a vital concern to its people.
California invested heavily in schools. 5.5 cents of every dollar went to education.
The school district had so much money that they didn't even use the state textbooks. They sat on the wall and they bought textbooks off the market that they thought were better and more appropriate and more interesting.
The state's commitment to education extended beyond